Thank you all for joining us here for this Think Tech session. And thank you, Yashish. Thank you, Shayne, for joining us on this panel today. Really appreciate your time. So I'll just set a very quick context to what we're trying to do here. But before that, maybe we could start with a very quick round of introductions. I mean, Yashish, obviously, the CEO. And,
I run a company called Policy Bazaar, which is not as exciting as that. we compare insurance products for consumers who are looking for insurance.
And I think he completely understated it when he said that. Yashish, I don't know if it's still up for announcement or not, but maybe I think we should all give Yashish and Policy Bazaar a very big round of applause. They're very close to raising a gigantic round of funding. And I think it's still, I'm sure you wouldn't want me to talk about it too much because it's still not public, but there I said it. Shayne.
So my name is Shayne Orbell. I work across the ad exchange business in Asia Pacific. So looking after markets such as Japan, China, Southeast Asia, Australia, and obviously India. Prior to this, I've been working programmatic for the last 3 years. I launched the Invite media business into Asia Pacific, DoubleClick Bid Manager, and now I work a lot more closely with the publishers and the buy-side programmatic technologies.
Fantastic. I'm Subra Krishnan. I take care of products and marketing at Vizury. We are at booth 43. We are a performance marketing firm headquartered in Bangalore with offices in Asia, Pacific, and Latin America. Drop by, we recently launched a performance marketing hub, which is exciting. We also do a lot of very interesting performance marketing stuff on retargeting side, which is Web Convert and Mobi Convert. We have 2 products. So please do drop by booth 43 when you get the time. So the context set, and a very brief sort of context setting here, is that obviously the theme for AdTech this year is both big data and engagement, right? And 2 sub-themes that we wanted to pick was one around predictive analytics and how that's starting to play a huge role in how marketers take decisions, in how organizations like Google are adopting it. So that's one. And the second theme is around personalization, which is what we are using towards driving much, much better user engagement. So we want to take these 2 sub-themes and just sort of explore it under the sort of ambit of data-fueled marketing, which is what we are focusing on ad tech this year. So first off, Yashish, I just wanted to get your first level views. When you talk of data-fueled marketing, what's your first level take on what it means to you as someone that is actively involved and has a large user base?
Sure. So it means a couple of things. First of all, it is people before they've come to us, figuring out from a data perspective what are the best people to get, and when those people do come in, what are they looking for and connecting to the offers. That's part one. And kind of positioning our offers for best impact and analyzing that all the time. The second part is when people do come to us, connecting them to the right resources, whether those be the insurance companies or whether that be the trained agents, and which one is trained to kind of handle which kind of customer. So it's there's a lot of prediction around what is this customer going to want, and doing that in real time with at least thousands of users at the same time does start to become data intensive. I think if we are able to do that in the next 6 to 12 months, that'll be fantastic for us.
Fantastic. Shayne, what about your first level thoughts from Google's perspective?
I think often, in terms of when we look at it from a programmatic standpoint, when we look at it from data-fueled marketing, the key thing for us is about the user. I think one of the philosophies that you'll hear from our product and engineering team is really around understanding what a beautiful experience is with our product. So we call that what makes a beautiful experience for our users and our interaction. And using data for me is exactly about that. It's about designing content, the user experience, the user journey. It's not about finding users because we just find them in a retargeting cookie pool. It's not about just prospecting. It's about kind of engaging that experience with customers, finding ways that we can complement how they engage with our brands, and better using that data to improve that streamlined process when they're engaging with us. The second piece, I think, is really around how we understand user privacy. We were speaking about this before. And, there's this real tension, I think, globally at the moment around, what's acceptable in terms of the use of data. What does the user get back when they offer their data up? and how do we use that responsibly as a marketer? And I think that's going to be, only become more critical for marketers to understand that value proposition for their users when they are using big data.
Got it. So if I were to summarize first level thoughts, it's about, from your perspective, giving the best possible experience and the most relevant experience as quickly as possible.
Yep.
And I think you talked about that as well, keeping the user experience relevant, but obviously also respecting a lot of the data that is coming your way and how to use that in a responsible fashion. So that seems to be your first level thoughts. So if I look at that first sub-theme, Yashish, and coming back to you again, around predictive analytics, you talked about how you can use big data to give a relevant experience as soon as possible. So can you give me some first level thoughts around what you're trying to do here
Sure.
in Policy Bazaar?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things, besides just the marketing, when the people do come to us, is we kind of, insurance tends to be complicated. There are about say health insurance, there may be 150 different policies. It's very difficult to figure out which one's right for you. So what we do is we kind of compartmentalize these into 2-3 types. And what we try to predict at this stage is what is the probability that this customer profile is likely to take one of these 3. And actually, we don't just predict, we actually announce it to the customer. That so the new product development is basically going to do that. So it's going to say 66% of the people with your profile chose this, but you can still choose the other 2 types. And once the person has chosen which type, then it gets down to, okay, within this, which are the products? And again, the same stuff, that so many people chose this. So one is not referring a product, one is not advancing it in any way, but all one is laying out transparently is that in the past, this is the percentage of customers who've chosen this particular one. And I think at a next level, see what we also, when I said 150 products, we also use the call center servicing, right? Now the call center, you cannot train one person on 106 products. So he can be trained on maximum 3 to 5 products. And we don't want to favor any company or kind of do anything of that sort or work basis what we get. But at the same time, we do want to give the customer who is looking for a particular product, that agent who's trained at that particular product rather than another one. And I think matching that across about 2,000 agents also starts to become an interesting data and operational task.
So, so when you're trying to design a system like this, which is going to benefit both your call center as well as give super relevant experiences on the site, you talked about that. What sort of data are you starting to use? What sort of data are you finding valuable, and what sort of data are you finding not so valuable? Are there any first level sort of thoughts?
I think it's basically the most recent, like last 3 months, 6 months, transactional data and traffic data. So you're basically starting to profile customers very quickly and then retarget. And I think that's what's becoming most useful. What we're also starting to do now is retargeting, again, most probably with your guys' help, where the people who've been to us, think about the insurance companies. The insurance companies don't have access to people who are looking for insurance right now. We have that access. So people who are looking for insurance, can the insurance companies retarget them? But at the same time, we have to figure out that the person who retargets is the most relevant one. So we can't have 30 companies bombarding the same customer. So we have to do analysis around which company is going to have the best impact by doing that. So in our own small way, we're nowhere where probably some of the players like Google, etc. are. But in our own small way, we're starting to do that analytics. And I think the data is all transactional, that where did the transaction finally happen, where did the selection finally happen. So it's past historical data, which is being used for real-time prediction of current people.
I think that's probably an interesting time to bring you into this conversation here, because, and he talked about how it operates at Google scale, and obviously we know that as well. In some sense, Google completely disrupted the display space, and you could argue that it forced a lot of players to adopt predictive analytics and make sure they're using it at scale. So what does this entire predictive analytics look like from Google's perspective?
I think the most important thing for people to plan for in the future is attribution modeling. And the predictive side of things really comes from a better understanding of what's happening today. To a big degree, to a large degree, attribution modeling is still the holy grail of everything that we do. The smartest of algorithms have to be designed with context on both raw data, but one of the challenges for marketers today is what to measure. I think the upside of what Google's done in terms of the disruption of display is that it's created an open ecosystem and a more transparent marketplace. To some degree, the downside is that we've made it very complex. And the fragmentation of technologies, the advancement of algorithms, the different, even to the extent of the people that work in our industry today, there's been so much change in such a short period of time. And for marketers, that's become a very confusing space to work in. And, it's all about measuring what matters and helping them understand that, the analysis, what's the phrase? Paralysis by analysis. Whilst you want to use raw data, you want to be able to measure everything, often you can get stuck in a scenario where it's just too much. It doesn't become actionable. And to your point around speed of actionability, that's critical. So I think, planning for the future of cross-device, how you can look at a holistic view of a customer. ROI is not just about one channel. It's about starting to attribute things across your entire marketing spend. And then finally, how do we help marketers do that more simply and effectively?
And can you also talk a little bit about, I think that would be very relevant for the audience here, how you're seeing this shape up in different geos, because I think sitting from where you are, you're seeing it across specifically Asia Pacific. So what do you see in India, and how does that compare to, let's say, markets like Japan, which is probably more mature, and maybe China, which is maybe not as mature, and other geos? What's your sense of how all of this is shaping out?
One of the interesting things, I spend a lot of time in the US dealing with my American counterparts, and they always refer to the strong penetration of double-click and ad serving and publisher adoption of RTB. When I talk to them about Asia Pacific, they still think APAC's a country. And breaking that geo, I guess, market maturity down, each of those countries you mentioned has significant difference in terms of where they're at from a maturity point of view, where they're at from a technology standpoint and a development point of view, where they're at from a marketing expertise. All of these scenarios are very much different. If you look to Australia is a relatively small population, but an extremely mature market in terms of marketing and media. Their video market is probably one of the most competitive in the world, and their talent pool for agency people, ad trading desks, tech vendors is extremely advanced. You then look to, say, a Japan, which has a completely different dynamic. It's a much more closed marketplace. You have large agency players, large publishers that dominate the majority of that market. I wouldn't say that transparency has really, moved the needle yet in Japan. It's starting. But ad serving is still viewed as a cost that is unnecessary. And when you're talking about attribution modeling, if you're not ad serving, you don't see the value in that, there's still some way for I guess, that market to move. China is a really interesting one in that when you look to China, they have the ability to kind of, that they can look forward to the mistakes that other markets have made. So they're advancing very quickly, and you're seeing a lot of local tech development. The big players like Ali, Baidu, Tencent, they're developing their own technologies, and they're looking at companies like Google and Facebook, learning from what, we've made mistakes and where we've seen successes, and they're adapting those learnings to their products as they roll them out. Again, very much a publisher-dominated market. China is still, which does create, complexity in terms of opening up a marketplace. I don't think it's any secret that people will raise the issue of fraud from both the buyer's point of view and the seller's point of view. But I do believe China is catching up fast and definitely trying to clamp down on those areas and challenges. When I look to Southeast Asia, again, it's fragmentation. So, a lot of businesses are hubbing out of Singapore, looking at how they can activate markets. I think one of the key learnings for us is that Asia Pacific will have the first mobile-first markets. India is a mobile-first market. Indonesia is a mobile-first market. And what I mean by that is if you look to the exchange-based buying, for us, well over 50% in both Indonesia and India of the total available impressions is now mobile. And when you look to America, for instance, where, as a mature market, you've got about 43% of total impressions. So, I guess the key there is for markets like India, we really do have to rethink the way that the traditional marketing model has worked in the past. Native ads, it's going to be one of the topics that I'm sure everyone's talking about here today. Video on mobile, finding better ways to create ad units, experiences on devices, rather than, considering the traditional create the television commercial, roll out multiple execution across devices, try and piece that all together. India's really going in the next few years, I think, continue to just drive mobile through both low-cost device, but also, high-end devices.
Got it. And Shayne started talking about attribution modeling, Yashish, and I know in my conversations with you, You've brought it numerous times as well. Obviously, yours is a very unique mix of online and offline sort of business. And there are other insurance companies as well out there that ask for attribution and how much of a role does everybody have to play. So do you see analytics playing a role in this at all, especially given this interplay of online and offline that's happening?
Yeah, massive. I think analytics is obviously critical in that. And I think attribution to some extent will be key to growing, at least I can speak about the insurance market. Because if you have the right attribution, you're at least giving the right incentives to the parties to kind of invest behind the particular brands or the particular platforms that are leading to transactions, or at least contributing to transaction in some way. And I think so far, compared to, the other market I know is the UK market. I think if I compare it to the UK market, we are way behind. So we're probably a 1 on 10 if they are a 9 on 10. And I think I'm not saying they are perfect, but we do need to kind of sort that out. And one of the ways we are figuring that out is, see, we tried to kind of approach the companies and say, hey, let's do this attribution, that they don't want to attribute, but they do want to market, and they do want to acquire on themselves. So essentially, if you give them the retargeting ability, that in a way leads to attribution, and it in fact leads to more powerful attribution because all your customers voluntarily may not have gone to them, but if you give the person where they're supposed to go the ability to kind of get in touch with them very rapidly and transact, they could probably double the business coming in from that side. So you might actually have higher attribution than you would without that retargeting. So retargeting makes it an active effort for them, whereas what we initially were trying to attempt, which was a tag management kind of thing, makes it passive and makes it like, I'm getting it for free, so why should I pay for it? Whereas retargeting definitely, seems good for them as well as good for us.
So in some sense, you're sort of saying, I'm passing the onus of using data to you. That's sort of what you're trying to say there.
Yeah, so see, the way I put it to the insurance companies is, look, a bulk of the people who are looking for insurance right now are probably coming to people like us and searching it out. Some of these people will buy, but all of them will not buy from us. Some of them will naturally come to you, maybe 2%, maybe 5%, maybe 10%, depending on how strong a brand you are. But we can actually give you access to the entire 100% if you want. If that happens, you will sell to more. You actually have no problem selling because you're facing cost of acquisitions, which are quite high anyway. So I think somewhere it is ownership that I'm doing it myself. That makes it easier for the marketing managers to start attributing it. Whereas if you're not providing that ownership, somewhere the marketing manager is not willing to. So there's a bit of an us versus them, and I think we have to just get rid of that because that's not so relevant.
One other thing I remember again before we move on to personalization, which is the second theme. Yashish, I in our conversations, I remember once you talked about because again there is this unique mix of online and offline. You talked about better understanding what sort of a role does a call center play, because we know Policy Bazaar, and anyone who's experienced the Policy Bazaar sort of user experience would vouch for the fact that there's a terrific amount of user interaction that happens. Typically within a minute of submitting a lead, you have a call center guy calling you, walking you through the process. And then you talked about attribution in that sense, which is understanding which of your internal channels have touched the customer and what is their respective roles.
No. So we're trying to figure some of the stuff out there. Quite honestly, the reason we've been running a large call center is because the customer who comes to us is anyways likely to buy. He's either going to buy from us or from the insurance company or somewhere. The call center has a better chance of grabbing that transaction. So it's sort of helped in the early days. What we're realizing is it's not been very scientific, and it's got to get more scientific. So just to give you an example, if you're looking for motor insurance, you're likely to buy at a particular time before your due date, and we kind of call too early. So so we figured if we call later, the conversion rates are high. So there's lots of the moment you kind of get online and offline, your whole engagement of data and operations becomes quite heavy. I think the ideal case for us is having no call center and the insurance companies retargeting and selling. I just think it makes much more sense. But I don't think every company is at that stage. So we do need to keep running a call center for some time. It's just, otherwise, it'll just become a very unfair. So see, today if we get attributed 50% of what we do, if we don't have a call center, we'll probably get attributed 20% of what we do. And that'll just become, it'll be bad for the entire industry eventually, because what will happen is we'll die. And if we die, that low-cost acquisition tool that the industry had will go away, which, is not good for anybody eventually. And similarly for the consumer, if we die, they will stop having the option of getting sensible data on these 106 plans and kind of be left on their own. So yeah.
So let's take the second sub-theme here, which is personalization. And Yashish, again, maybe I'll start with you here and then come to Shayne. One part is obviously the research of the policy and, driving the user to the right policy as soon as possible. What about after the transaction is over and how you look at consumers after that? And do you look at personalizing that experience? Are you trying? What are the set of things that you're trying there, and how does data play a role?
So we're looking at claims experience personalization. So if you have a car insurance or a health insurance, suppose I have a health insurance, just have a heart attack right now. Where do you take me? You don't know which policy I have, but my phone does know which policy I have, and my phone does know which are the network hospitals, and my phone does know which is the best place for me to go right now. And the phone does know who my third-party associate is. And the phone does know which insurance company is and which insurance company needs to be informed. So the phone does all of this almost instantaneously. The same thing on the car insurance. We've just launched something in terms of driver behavior capture. And remember, we've had this option for the last 4 or 5 years to take somebody else's technology, but we kind of developed our own. And I think, again, it's obvious what you can do in terms of personalization of risk basis that experience. We're now talking with the insurance companies about wellness. So people can have diabetes, people can have certain health issues, but if they're putting in the right effort, if they promise to put in the right effort over a period of time, whether it be walking, whether it be running, whether it be buying green, there can be advantages for those consumers. So I think those kinds of personalization you would keep having. What we want to still leave it to the consumer to come back. We don't want to be aggressive in terms of you bought this, so this is right for you. First of all, when I say we don't want to be aggressive, it's more of a commercial thing. It's never worked for us. If it starts working, we'll probably start doing it. But the reason it's not worked is probably because somewhere it's irritating to consumers. So I think we'll see as it goes.
But that's really astounding, because what you're talking about here is personalization, which is not really trying to drive an agenda, a personal agenda, but instead is trying to just look at all the consumer behavior that's happening, like, for example, monitoring their health patterns or everything else, and offering a relevant experience. And that's...
See, our industry, I keep telling the VCs, our industry starts reverse. See, most of e-commerce starts with really cracking consumer acquisition. Our industry starts with cracking claims. If you crack claims, then if you crack payments, then if you crack the last transaction experience, then if you crack customer acquisition, it's okay. If you do it the other way around, you'll eventually die, because the back end is very badly messed up.
That's very, very insightful. I think I'm sure everybody would have enjoyed listening to that part of it. Shayne, coming to you, and you started talking about retargeting a little bit, and the notion of personalization running at scale. And again, a lot of algorithms driving that. And of course, maybe here I can't help bring up, even though Google is a competitor in some sense, the fact that Google also does a lot of personalized remarketing. What is Google's view of personalization and how it sort of looks at things like recommendations and the user experience customization?
I'll probably give it more from my point of view than a Google point of view. Having worked in CRM in the past and having been a marketer and then moving into the tech space, I think I agreed with everything that Yashish has said then in terms of the acquisition side of things, but also that the value add and what the customer receives in terms of using data to provide that. I think one of the things that we ignore, though, is the stickiness. And most brands are so acquisition focused that they don't really look to see what else are they doing to complement the user experience. And when you're talking about retargeting often is viewed as just one thing. What's the price on an ROI? Sure, we understand the lifetime of a customer value, but how are we using data to better design products that will create complementary experiences or complementary content to users that are engaging with your brand? And I think, from Google's point of view, with this shift towards, the internet of everything and devices everywhere, this is going to be so much more important to understand, well, what are people doing and why are they doing it? How do they interact with my brand? where are the areas of value that you can create that don't always, necessarily relate to a transaction or a sale, but give people a good feeling about your brand, make them more inclined to stick to your brand, make them a more valuable customer, and really kind of look outside of the traditional methods of just, your DM marketing, building products that complement what people do, creating environments of value where people can experience your brand for free, or, as you were talking about before, in terms of, apps that can help you with your health and management, help you with your driving. Like, these sorts of things now with mobile devices are areas that don't necessarily only transact, in terms of a financial point of view, but it really comes back to how you engage with your users and keep them sticky to your brand.
And are there, because again, this is similar to how Yashish was talking about it, it really is amazing what you can do when you do all the things that you said now. Are there use cases that you see which are sort of becoming very close to reality or are already a reality in some sense?
Well, actually, I would say that you only have to look to China. So many of the executions of mobile device, the application of mobile devices today, when you're using products like the WeChats of the world, right? China's really kind of taken a mobile-first attitude in terms of how you can use your mobile device for payments, for bumping, for gaming. When I mean bumping, transacting of details. The gaming market is phenomenal. Vending machines where you can, pay in a vending machine to acquire products. So I think they've kind of really jumped to this multi-device, world and looking at, well, when the device is in your hand, what complementary experiences and services can you use that for? Japan has long since been a mobile web optimized market. They're very advanced in terms of having websites that provide you with a good experience. So I think there are markets that we can look to and take learnings from. And then, I think in the more mature markets, they've really understood that the stickiness and maintenance of customers is critical. You look to the Americas, and obviously everything is about how you can better engage with your brand. How do you keep customers loyal? How do you keep them coming back? So I think looking to those markets for very different reasons, there's a lot to learn.
Got it. So I think we have your views on both predictive analytics and personalization. And I think some of that was honestly astounding to hear what Google is doing and what Policy Bazaar is also trying to do here. Closing, just a quick segment. You're looking at 2015, and we talk of in forums like AdTech, data-fueled marketing. If you were to take your shot, and I'll hold you to it next year when you're at AdTech, the 3 predictions that you have this year when you think of data-fueled marketing, what is going to happen? What are your sort of thoughts on that? 3 things that you think is going to happen in 2015, which has not happened.
I think when I speak about our particular industry, I think attribution and retargeting will get a lot smarter. I think personalization through mobile will be very significant. So even in the insurance industry, more than 50% of the traffic, it's already about 30-40%. Maybe 60-70% of the traffic will be from the mobile. And I think the third one we just have to do, which is going to be more because insurance will be an online-offline medium, connecting the right profile with the right consumer. I think somewhere in 2015, some crack around that will start happening. We're trying to attempt something, but so far, I think all of it is geared towards real-time action and real-time transparency to the consumer, to the supplier, to everybody, based on historical data or based on some information you know. It's not rocket science. I think all it's looking for is some execution. That's how I see it. I think 2015 we certainly count as one year where you would see a lot of execution happening on this end.
Very interesting. Shayne, your thoughts, your 3 sort of predictions?
The first would be as I started, which was I believe that we need to make things simpler and more beautiful. And what I mean by that is, marketers want to understand simple stuff. They don't want the complexity. They want to know how to help measure the important things that matter and the right moments that matter for them. And complementary to that, things have to be beautiful. To make it simple, you want great content. You want simple user interfaces. You want things that people like to engage with and keep coming back. The second piece would be, start thinking about, your creatives and your executions on every device. I can't say it strongly enough that the world of mobile is going to change all of, the ways that marketers have to interact with their customers. Being smarter about that experience, looking at different ways to be engaging with those customers. Think about that from now. And the final piece, I think, is that data, whilst the term big data has been out there for some time, it's in some regards I regard that as a cliche. There's always been big data. We've always had data warehouses. The speed of machines, the accessibility has increased. But what we're really talking about is actionable data, and data is your it's your oil. And I think we're only going to see this complexity around how publishers utilize their data, how marketers start owning data ownership. So that third theme around how do we advance the usage of data is still, I think, some way away. Whilst we've moved a long way in the last couple of years, there's still light years to go.
Very interesting. Yashish, Shayne, thank you. I think it was a super insightful session, and thanks for your views. A big round of applause to Yashish and Shayne. Thank you for your time. We'll just open it up to questions if there are any for about 5-10 minutes. If not, we can break. I'll help out.
Thank you. So one of the big constraints for both predictive analytics and personalization is basically cross-device. As we know that people move from one device to another, and it becomes really difficult to build on those profiles that you talked about, or do the retargeting and all those stuff. I know Google doesn't really face that problem for their own, but in terms of leading the market, how do you think this problem being solved over time or next few years?
I guess one of the challenges for Google is really opening the market up in terms of data, and one of our biggest concerns, as I touched on multiple times, is protecting data privacy. How do we protect users? How do we ensure that users' data is not being used in a way that either compromises their own personal point of view, or for example, proximity targeting, or a government point of view? So we have to tread very carefully, I think, around how we roll that out to third parties and in what format. So the reason why Google, I guess from its own product point of view, is able to look at things like cross-device really is because we control that. We provide very clear paths for users to opt out. We adhere to all the policies that governments require around us for data privacy. And I think other brands are moving in that direction as well. I don't think I can simply answer your question in terms of is there a time frame that we might be able to open up to third parties a simpler solution. I think it's something that we're very aware of that the market's asking for, but the important bit there is that we have to do it in a way that does protect user privacy, and that's not an easy thing for us to do. I think there will be changes in format of the types of data. Logged in will be one of those. So obviously another large competitor of ours is very much down that path in terms of logged in data. We have logged in data. Other publishers have logged in data. So I think the future will somehow comprise of that. And I don't think it's any secret that at some point the transition from cookies to using new ways of targeting is definitely going to happen. Time frame again really relies on how different companies can manage that data privacy complexity.
Yashish, I just wanted Wayne here as well. How do you look at cross-device from policy disasters?
I honestly don't have any superior view in the sense I don't think I'll be able to add much value to the audience here. But essentially what we're looking at is at least giving the customer, once he's logged in, a uniform experience. And that's what we do today. Beyond that, we don't have too much ability to kind of make sure that I can track the customer across devices.
Got it. You have a question?
Yeah, hi, Yashish. I'm Darpan Majumdar from I9 Media, business head there. One of the questions to you is that you have an interesting mix of both online and offline. Now, having said that, how do you sort of mix the two? Because I think the most difficult thing is to really find insights using both the online and offline. So is there some mechanism which you use which is very helpful, and especially for, let's say, some startup products, if you can give some insight or some input, that what will be the best way of doing that?
So, it's a constant learning here. It's not that we kind of got it in one day. We spent the first 3 years of our existence just trying to somehow make it work. And it's only in about between 2008 to 2011. It's only in about 2011 that we started figuring out how it works to some extent. And we started working on that model, and we scaled up about 40 times in these last 3 years. But again, we are at a cusp where we are again thinking of reducing the offline intervention because to some extent the time has come to do that. So I think this is the right time for everything. But how we do it, so while we were very gung-ho about this, we met somebody who said, look, hey, in India this personalization thing is not so important. And it's again about timing, right? So from somebody's perspective, of course it's important, but it may not be important right now. And what that means is for 80% of customers it's not important right now. And what they said is, in India at least, the internet is all about SEC A minus B, C. It's not about SEC A plus only. And sometimes what can happen is if you build something only for SEC A plus, it might just crash altogether. It will have a future, but that future may be so far away. See, we don't have unlimited funds, right? So you just die before you kind of become good.
Right. So last question from the house, probably. Anyone? Yes? Yeah, please.
Hi, Shayne. I'm Ankush. I work with Dish TV, and we are a consumer-facing brand. I have a question, particularly, you talked about native ads, which is the new thing in. And obviously, the reason is it gives us better CTR and stuff. But as somebody who does not do native ad at Google, and as somebody who's a neutral, I wanted to understand the perspective. Suppose we start as a consumer brand, if we start doing native advertising and people click on that ad, thinking that click on that editorial piece, thinking it's an editorial piece, and going to relevant content, and instant they see a banner saying "Buy me." Oh no, is that good, bad for a brand? Because fair enough, from 1% CTR we might get a 2% CTR there. But what about those 98% of the people who actually had a bad experience? So should, as brands, as consumer brands, should we do that, or should we abstain from that?
Again, from my personal point of view of having been a marketer in the past, I feel like disclosure is the best way of looking at things. Flagging that it is an ad, even though we call it native, I guess native can have different forms in terms of, well, is it hidden content? Is it content that's within the page? Is it content that complements the surrounding context that's provided? I think, generally there's two trains of thought. One is disclosure, the ad choices, types of icon where things are served. The second is what's available within the context of the page valuable to the user or not? I don't know that I can give you a right or wrong answer on that. I do think that you have to be very careful with users that you don't be seen to be tricking them into customer experiences, because I think that's a bad user experience. That being said, if your content is adding additional value to that user and it's helping them find things that otherwise may not have been accessible to them, there are circumstances where it's very valuable. So is it right or wrong? I think very much related to the context of what the user's doing at the time, the environment they're in, is it complementary, and also, what's your stance on identifying that it is paid content or not? Generally, Google has gone down the route of identification of paid content.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for all the three panelists out here.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Pleasure meeting you.